They said she was guilty before the trial even began. A black maid accused of beating a billionaire's daughter. Her life shattered overnight. But what no one expected was that the truth would come from the very child she was accused of hurting. And when that 9-year-old girl opened her mouth in court, every lie, every mask, every ounce of power collapsed in a single moment. In a small, damp apartment, Ava Jackson, a black woman with a gentle face but eyes etched with exhaustion, had just lulled her 2 children to sleep. Their steady breathing filled the room, granting her a rare moment of silence. But that fragile peace was shattered by the pounding at the door. It wasn't the knock of a neighbor. It was the cold, mechanical rhythm of authority, as if a gavel had struck against iron. Ava froze, her heart racing. She glanced toward the bedroom, praying the noise wouldn't wake the children, then cautiously opened the door. The hallway light fell across her dark skin, revealing the tension she couldn't hide. Standing before her were 2 towering police officers, their faces as unreadable as stone. "Are you Ava Jackson?" one of them asked, his voice flat, bureaucratic. "Yes, that's me," Ava stammered, her hand tightening on the door frame. The other officer raised a clear evidence bag. Inside was a worn brown teddy bear. Ava's breath caught. It was Barnaby, the toy she had stitched herself for Lily Sterling, the only daughter of billionaire Julian Sterling, the man she worked for as a housemaid. "This was found at the scene," the officer said. "You are under arrest on suspicion of child abuse." The words struck her like a blow. Abuse? A crime scene? Ava remembered perfectly. Just that afternoon, she had placed Barnaby beside Lily as she soothed the girl to sleep. How could love turn into evidence? How could a teddy bear, a symbol of comfort, suddenly become the weapon set to destroy her life? And behind the gilded doors of that mansion, what truth was being buried in silence? Ava Jackson was never just a maid. She never thought of herself that way. She was a mother, a woman who had weathered storms life hurled at her face. Her husband had left her with nothing but divorce papers, 2 small children, and a pile of debt. But instead of collapsing, she stood up. By day, Ava scrubbed public bathrooms. By night, she worked shifts at a diner, her hands raw from dish soap, her hair carrying the heavy scent of grease. She endured it all so her children would have food to eat and a roof that didn't leak. When she was hired at the mansion of billionaire Julian Sterling, Ava exhaled in relief. It wasn't just a job, it was an opening, a door to hope. She thought, maybe God finally remembered her. But hope, sometimes, grows in dark corners. And in Julian Sterling's world, everything came with a price. Ava didn't yet know that this job was also a web, an invisible snare waiting to tighten around her life. Late one night, after finishing her chores, Ava sat in the small room for staff. She stitched the fraying shoulder of her uniform. Her fingers moved slowly through the thread, weary but steady. On the table sat a cheap photo frame holding the picture of her 2 children. It reminded her why she kept pushing forward. Ava smiled faintly. They were her strength. Lily Sterling lived in a house plated with gold, but felt lonelier than a forgotten child in a cold room. Her mother had died, giving birth to her. Her father, Julian, loved her in his own way, with expensive gifts and lavish trips. But the kind of love a child truly needed was absent. Ava noticed this from the first time she met Lily. One evening, while looking for a cleaning cloth, Ava found the girl crying in a closet. "What's wrong, little angel?" Ava whispered softly, like speaking to the wind. Through tears, Lily lifted her face. "Dad, he forgot Mom's birthday again." Ava had no words. Sometimes comfort doesn't come from speech, so she simply hugged Lily, held her tightly, the way a mother soothes a child through a nightmare. That night, the 2 of them baked a small, lopsided cake in the kitchen. A single candle flickered in the center, its light dancing across Lily's smiling face. There were no roses, no champagne, no orchestra, only the sound of a child's laughter and the warmth of a woman's arms. From that evening, Lily began calling Ava a secret name. "Mama, Ava." It was whispered, tucked between them like a treasure. Ava kept it close to her heart. Julian never heard it. Or maybe he didn't want to. Ava once had a complete family, until her husband walked away and her mother passed too soon. Her heart had been torn more than once. Perhaps those very losses gave her the ability to see the hollow ache in Lily's young eyes. Julian Sterling was not born a monster. He was shaped by a world where power was everything. He did love his daughter, but his love looked like ownership. One rare evening, Julian came home early. He paused at Lily's doorway, and what he saw made him freeze. Ava reading a story aloud, Lily giggling as she nestled into her side. Julian cleared his throat. "Bedtime, Lily. The maid can leave now." His voice was steel. "But I want Mama Ava to stay," Lily pouted. Julian's brow furrowed. "I am your father, Lily. Do as I say." His eyes cut into Ava like a hidden blade. "You've done your job. That's enough." Ava rose, lowered her head, but her heart clenched. She knew what that really was. Not a reminder, but a declaration. Julian would not tolerate a black woman, poor and small, stepping into the sacred place he wanted to claim as his own. His daughter's heart. To him, Ava was a thorn, one lodged exactly where it hurt most. Another evening. The golden glow of a lamp fell across Lily's tiny face. Julian sat at her bedside, his large hand awkward as he pulled up her blanket. It was one of the few rituals he had kept since his wife's death, wishing his daughter good night. Then he saw it. On Lily's pale arm, faint beneath the light, was a bruise. Julian went still. No roar, no outburst, just silence, the kind that thickened the air, pressing down like a weight. "Lily, sweetheart." His voice was soft, but a chill ran through it. "Tell Daddy. Did Ava hurt you?" Startled, Lily turned away. "No, Daddy, I just fell." Her small voice trembled. Julian stroked her hair, his eyes dark as the night outside. He smiled faintly, nodded. "All right, Angel. Sleep. Daddy believes you." But he didn't believe her. Or more truthfully, he didn't want to. Lily's words mattered less than the opportunity now pulsing in his mind. The chance to rid himself of the woman who dared touch his daughter's heart. When the bedroom door closed, Julian stood in the hallway, still as a statue. Then, slowly, a cold smile crept across his lips. A smile sharp enough to make the shadows seem to recoil. The plan was born. Meanwhile, downstairs, Ava was finishing her shift. She hummed a tune under her breath, her steps light with the thought of returning to her children. She waved goodbye to the housekeeper, then pushed through the heavy side door. Cool night air filled her lungs like a gift. She had no idea the peace she felt was only the quiet shell before the storm. Each footstep on the stone path was carrying her closer to a trap already set. High above, Julian watched from his office window. His eyes, cold and sharp, followed her small figure until the trees swallowed her. Only when the darkness had consumed her did he turn away. He picked up his phone, fingers moving quickly. His voice was calm, detached. "I have a job for you. The maid, Ava Jackson. I want her destroyed. Build a story. Use every resource. I don't want her near my daughter ever again." Julian Sterling wasn't trying to fire an employee. He was out to annihilate a person. This wasn't about bruises. It was about power, class, and the terror of losing the one thing he could never buy. And that engine of destruction, set in motion with a single phone call, was already aimed at a mother walking home, her heart filled only with love and simple dreams. Ava would soon sit in a cold jail cell, the image of her children waiting for her, cutting into her chest. She might lose everything, all because of a lie. If you believe kindness should never be punished, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to see how Ava fights back. But what no one knows yet is this. Ava Jackson is more than a mother. She has a gift no one suspects. A weapon that might just turn the trial upside down. What will happen next? That morning, the sky sagged gray, like an old tarp stretched across the city. People flocked to the courthouse as if attending a show. They clutched newspapers and notebooks, but in their eyes was only the hunger to witness tragedy. Ava Jackson sat at the defendant's bench. She wore a borrowed dress, its collar loose, the seams already fraying. On her narrow shoulders she felt the weight of 1,000 stares. She looked down at her hands hardened from scrubbing floors, now trembling uncontrollably, and they seemed unbearably small against the grandeur of this courtroom. Across from her, Julian Sterling entered like a sovereign mounting his throne. A tailored black suit clung perfectly to his frame, a gold watch flashed on his wrist, and his silver-streaked hair combed to meticulous order. Every movement he made was followed by eyes brimming with respect, even reverence. To them, Julian was more than a businessman. He was a living statue of power. Beside Ava, her court-appointed lawyer, a thin young man in a creased suit, leaned in to whisper, "Just breathe, Ms. Jackson. We'll try our best. Try." The word wasn't a promise of a fight. It was the quiet admission of a fight already lost. His "we'll try" sounded an awful lot like "prepare to lose." The prosecutor rose, his words slicing through the hushed air. "The prosecution calls Maria Gomez." Maria, the cook Ava once called sister, stepped forward. Her kitchen whites had yellowed with years, and her hands twisted together until the knuckles turned pale. She avoided Ava's gaze as though a single glance might force the truth from her lips. "Mrs. Gomez," the prosecutor began, "did you ever see Ms. Jackson show anger toward little Lily?" Maria hesitated. For a heartbeat, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, loyalty, shame, but it was crushed by an invisible weight. "Yes, once," she muttered. The child was such a nuisance. Ava's heart lurched. "No, Maria, you know I never said that." "And on the day of the incident," the prosecutor pressed, "did you hear anything?" Maria bit her lip, her voice trembling. I heard Lily crying, and I heard Ms. Jackson shout, 'Stay still!'" The words crashed down like a hammer against stone. Ava burst out, tears spilling. "Yes, I said that!" But it was when she nearly fell from the swing. "I was saving her, not hurting her." No one answered. Maria kept her head bowed. Half-truths, half-lies, like a serpent shedding skin, twisting what was real into venom. In Ava's mind, memories tore through her. Sharing the last piece of bread with Maria after a long shift. Laughing together when Lily pouted in the kitchen. And now, that same woman turned her back, turning friendship into a blade. Julian didn't need to speak. He simply tilted his head, the ghost of a smile curving his lips. Ava saw it clearly, the satisfaction of a man watching a script unfold exactly as written. "The prosecution calls Mr. Julian Sterling." The air stilled. Julian rose, each step proclaiming dominion. When he placed his hand on the stand, the entire courtroom seemed to lean toward him. His voice came low, deliberate. "My wife died giving birth to Lily. That child, she is all I have left. I entrusted my treasure to that woman." He turned, fingers stabbing toward Ava. A muffled sob rippled somewhere in the gallery. Pens scratched furiously on paper, recording every syllable. Julian paused, eyes shining, then suddenly roared, "And she betrayed me! Look at those bruises! That was no accident. Those are the marks of a demon's hand." His voice ripped through the chamber like thunder. A few gasped, hands rising to cover mouths. A journalist whispered, "Dear God." Julian collapsed into his palms, shoulders shaking, his sobs so convincing that even a few jurors dabbed at their eyes. Ava sat frozen, her vision blurring with tears. He was performing, and everyone believed. They saw his tears, but not her truth. In this place, the tears of a billionaire outweighed the words of a black maid. Hopelessness tightened around her throat. She lowered her head, trembling in the stiff wooden chair, like a bird trapped in a cage, able to see the sky but never fly. The prosecutor smoothed his tie, his smile triumphant. "Your Honor, the prosecution calls our final witness, Lily Sterling." Silence fell like a shroud. The door opened. Lily stepped in, a 9-year-old girl in a plain white dress, clutching Barnaby, the teddy bear Ava had sewn with loving hands. Now it was paraded as evidence. Her small shoes tapped against the floor, each step striking Ava's heart like a gavel. The girl lifted her gaze. Her eyes, wide and innocent, shimmered with fear. When they met Ava, a glimmer of light flashed, then vanished. She turned to her father. Julian gave a slight nod, so simple, so calm. Yet it clamped on Lily's shoulders like chains. Ava's palms were slick with sweat, her hands clenched until the nails dug in. "My child, what will you say? Will you choose love or fear?" Time froze. The audience held their breath. The jury leaned forward. The prosecutor smiled. Ava's young lawyer swallowed hard, his eyes locked on the child. And Ava understood at last. Hell was not underground. Hell was right here, in this very moment, when a child was forced to lie for the love of her father, even if that lie destroyed another human being. Lily climbed onto the witness stand, so small that the tall wooden chair seemed to swallow her whole. Her white dress was wrinkled, her little hands twisting the fabric tight. Barnaby the teddy bear, treated now as a piece of evidence, sat pressed in her lap, a burden instead of a comfort. Her eyes darted across the vast courtroom. The crowd stared as if she were some heavenly messenger or a fragile victim about to deliver a revelation. But Lily didn't feel like an angel. She felt like a leaf tossed helplessly into the storm. From the defendant's bench, Ava's tearful gaze reached out as though carrying 1,000 unspoken words. "My child, you are not alone. Even if I lose everything, I will still believe in you." But between them sat Julian, a wall of steel, his face stern, commanding, heavy with unspoken orders. The judge leaned forward. "Lily, can you tell the court where those bruises on your arm came from?" A wave of tension rolled through the room. Everybody leaned forward. Lily pressed her lips tight, hugging the bear. Her heart hammered, too fast, too loud. And then her voice came, tiny, fragile, but sharp enough to tear through the silence. It was Miss Ava! Gasps rippled through the gallery. The prosecutor smiled with satisfaction. Pen scratched furiously. Jurors nodded gravely. Cold eyes turned toward Ava. Ava felt the words stab her chest like knives. Yet her gaze held no anger, only sorrow. The child was terrified. She was only doing what she thought would protect her father's love. Julian exhaled slowly, relieved, like a director savoring his climactic scene playing out perfectly. He tapped his fingers lightly against the table, a quiet applause for his own orchestration. But inside Lily, the storm raged louder. Each false word weighed her chest down like a stone. She looked at Ava, her Mama Ava, and found only faith in those tearful eyes. Faith so strong it made her lie feel unbearable. Ava's young lawyer stood. He saw the war in Lily's eyes, terror battling love. And in that moment, the defeated man vanished. What remained was a protector. He walked toward the stand, no longer fighting a case, but fighting for a child. "Lily," his voice was gentle, almost like a breeze. "Can you look at Miss Ava and say that again?" Lily turned. Her eyes met Ava's, eyes wet with grief, but glowing with a love big enough to hold her whole world. Lily's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Her body shook. Barnaby slipped from her grasp, tumbling to the floor with a dull thud that echoed louder than any word. The lawyer pressed on. "Lily, has Miss Ava ever read you bedtime stories?" The girl nodded, whispering, "Every night." "Has she ever baked with you?" Lily's voice cracked. "Yes, chocolate chip cookies." "Then tell us, Why would someone like that ever hurt you? The dam broke. Lily burst into tears, her sobs ripping through the room. Her cry rang out, shaking the walls. No! She didn't do it. Mama Ava never hurt me. Daddy told me to say it. He said if I didn't, he'd send me to boarding school and I'd never see Mama Ava again. The courtroom exploded. Gasps, whispers, chairs scraping, cameras flashing. Jurors looked stunned. Julian shot up, face pale as ash. Stop it, Lily! You're lying. You don't know what you're saying. But the louder he shouted, the more he looked like a man unraveling. The young lawyer seized the moment. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, my client has a critical detail to add. Ava leaned in, whispering quickly. Her mind, sharp, photographic, retrieved what others had missed. She remembered every corner of that mansion, every hidden angle. Lily, the lawyer continued gently, do you remember the day you fell? Where were you playing? On the big staircase, Lily sniffled. I was sliding down the railing. The lawyer nodded firmly. Your Honor, the Sterling estate has surveillance cameras. Mr. Sterling submitted footage, claiming there was nothing important. But my client remembers, above the staircase hangs a large mirror, a mirror that would have reflected everything. The room stirred. The judge narrowed his eyes. Mr. Sterling, is that true? Julian stammered. I don't, the lawyer pressed. We request the footage again, but this time, focus not on the staircase. Look at the mirror. Tension stretched tight as a wire. Julian collapsed back into his seat, his face drained. He had forgotten that mirror, forgotten the one silent witness he couldn't bribe or erase. Hope flickered in Ava's chest for the first time in weeks. Maybe, finally, truth had found its way. The video played. The screen showed the grand staircase, at first empty. Then, in the mirror's reflection, it appeared Lily, slipping, tumbling down the steps. Ava rushed toward her, not with fury, but with panic, catching her, clutching her, tears streaming as she soothed the frightened child. No violence, no malice, only fear and love. The room froze. Pens stopped. Cameras stilled. Jurors stared, as though waking from a dark dream. Julian Sterling slumped, sweat beading at his brow. That mirror had reflected more than just an accident. It had laid bare the truth he tried to bury. Ava closed her eyes. A single tear fell, but this time it wasn't despair. It was vindication. The truth had finally spoken. The screen went dark, but the echo of the mirror's reflection still lingered in every heart. For a suspended moment, time itself seemed to stop. No one dared to breathe too loudly. What had just been shown was simple. A child slipping, a woman rushing to catch her, hands trembling as she held and soothed. No violence, no rage, only raw, human love. The judge straightened, his stern eyes fixed on Julian Sterling. The man who once sat like a god now looked broken, his polished hair disheveled, his eyes hollow. There were no more tears left to perform. Inside Ava, a tide surged. The humiliation she had endured, the lies that had buried her, the weight of despair pressing down for endless days. All of it now lifted by truth. Not truth spoken in her voice, not truth begged for, but truth revealed by a silent mirror. Sometimes the strongest proof isn't a scream, but a reflection. The jury filed out. Ava sat frozen, her heart pounding so fiercely she thought it might break free. Julian hunched over, fingers knotted together. Not in prayer, but perhaps in a futile grip on the last shreds of dignity. 15 minutes later, the jurors returned. The foreman held a slip of paper. Every step toward the bench pressed heavier on Ava's chest. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ava Jackson, not guilty. The words fell like church bells, ringing across the room. Ava wept. The first tears she had allowed since the trial began. Not restrained tears of despair, but tears of release. At first, applause trickled, hesitant. Then it swelled, spreading across the chamber. Not everyone joined, but enough to show that truth, however delayed, could still touch human hearts. The moment was cut short by the sharp rap of the gavel. "Order," the judge commanded. His eyes, hard and unyielding, turned to Julian. "Mr. Sterling," his voice struck like iron, "you did not merely commit perjury. You weaponized the love of your own daughter to destroy an innocent woman. Your conduct is cruel and unforgivable. This court temporarily revokes your custody. Lily Sterling will be placed under the care of Child Protective Services until further investigation." The words barely left his mouth before Lily's cry broke through the hall. She bolted from her chair, stumbling down the aisle, then flung herself into Ava's arms. "No, I want Mama Ava. Don't take me away." A social worker approached, face taut with discomfort. Ava held Lily tight, her heart cracking open. She had been vindicated. But was she about to lose the very child she had saved? And then Ava did the unthinkable. Still clutching Lily, she lifted her head to the judge, her voice trembling but clear. "Your Honor, forgive my boldness, but placing Lily in the system would only punish her again for the sins of adults. She's already suffered enough. Please, if the court allows, I request temporary guardianship. She knows me. She trusts me. I don't have wealth, but I have a home filled with love. I can give her stability and safety until all of this is resolved." Silence consumed the room. People had never heard such a request. A black maid, freshly cleared of charges, asking to raise the daughter of the man who tried to destroy her. The prosecutor leapt up to object, but the judge lifted his hand. His gaze swept over Ava, over Lily clinging to her, then over Julian, shattered, disgraced, a father stripped bare. And in that moment, the judge was not merely a judge. He was human. The gavel struck. The sound was final, resonant. Motion granted. Temporary guardianship of Lily Sterling is awarded to Ava Jackson under court supervision. The courtroom erupted, not with shock alone, but with thunderous applause, greater than before. Ava clung to Lily, tears soaking the girl's cheeks. But now they were tears of joy. Julian slumped, face drained, then was led away by officers. He had not only lost dignity and freedom, he had been forced to watch his daughter placed in the arms of the very woman he despised, the only one who truly loved her. Hand in hand, Ava and Lily stepped out of the courthouse. Afternoon sunlight poured over them, warm and embracing. They were no longer a maid and a billionaire's child. They were simply mother and daughter, walking forward together. Ava hadn't just won a trial. She had won a war for love and goodness. She had proven that a courageous heart could bend even the mightiest system. Ava Jackson entered the courthouse as a defendant and walked out a mother. She showed the world that family is not defined by blood, but forged in the fires of loyalty and love. In a world that worships wealth, she proved that the greatest inheritance isn't money, but kindness. And that kindness is not weakness. It is the ultimate, unbreakable power. What do you think will happen to Julian next? And do you believe Ava's act was the ultimate form of forgiveness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like this video to support us. Don't forget to share it with your friends to spread this message of love and truth. And remember to subscribe to Toch Story and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next story, where kindness always finds a way to win.